Welcome to Sleep and Bible, your peaceful corner of rest and reflection. Tonight, we bring you a soothing story from the Bible, a gentle journey to calm your mind, relax your soul, and help you drift into a peaceful sleep from the timeless wisdom of Ephesians. These stories are designed to inspire your heart, strengthen your faith, and guide you gently through life's moments while you relax, unwind, and prepare for rest. If you'd like to receive more stories that comfort your heart and calm your mind, don't forget to subscribe, tap the bell icon, and like this video, so we can continue bringing peace and faith to your nights. Now, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let the words of this story carry you into serene sleep. Welcome to Sleep and Bible, where faith meets tranquility. Asterisk, chosen before time. A story of divine purpose long before the foundations of the world were laid, before the mountains rose and the seas were formed. There existed a purpose so profound that it shaped the destiny of every soul that would ever walk the earth. This was not a purpose born of circumstance or chance. It was a divine plan, a calling from the Creator himself, and it was written into the very fabric of eternity. Among the countless souls, there was one whose story would reveal the depth of God's choosing. A story that would unfold across time and trials, hope and despair, joy and sorrow. The child was born into a world of uncertainty. From the moment of birth, the signs of a unique destiny were evident. Even as a toddler, there was a quiet wisdom in their eyes, a reflection of something unseen, a spark that could not be dimmed. The parents noticed it, yet could not fully understand it. They prayed and nurtured the child, unaware that their little one had been chosen before time, a soul handpicked by God to walk a path that would touch lives far beyond their own dot. As the child grew, life's challenges began to shape them. There were moments of doubt and fear, moments when the world seemed too harsh, and the weight of expectation too heavy to bear. Yet, even in these trials, there was a quiet assurance, an inner voice that whispered truths that could not be explained. It was as if the child carried within them a knowledge of something greater, a destiny that transcended the immediate struggles of life. School brought both challenges and opportunities. The child faced ridicule from peers, misunderstanding from teachers, and the ordinary trials of growing up. But every obstacle seemed to guide them closer to the purpose embedded in their heart. Each setback was not a punishment, but a shaping force, refining character, building resilience, and teaching lessons that could only come from experiencing life in its full depth. They discovered that the world's rejection could become a training ground for grace, that failure could forge strength, and that the whispers of the divine could be heard most clearly in moments of silence and struggle. Friendships became a mirror to their soul. Some friends inspired courage and faith. Others tested patience and compassion. Through these relationships, the child learned empathy, forgiveness, and the power of love that gives without expecting return. It became clear that the calling before them was not for selfish glory, but for the service of others, for the blessing of lives beyond their own. The choice of God had placed them on a path that demanded not just courage, but humility, not just talent, but character. As adolescence arrived, the weight of awareness grew. The child began to understand that their life was not ordinary, that there was a design woven by God into every heartbeat. They sought guidance through prayer, through scripture, and through reflection. Nights of contemplation revealed that being chosen did not mean an easy path, but a meaningful one. Every decision, every act of kindness, every moment of courage was a step along the journey. Preordained by God, there was a realization that life's trials were not random, but purposeful, each one shaping them into the person they were meant to become. Higher education and career choices brought new dimensions to the calling. The child, now a young adult, was faced with opportunities that seemed ordinary to others but carried extraordinary weight in the unfolding of their purpose. Choices had to be made with discernment, aligning personal desires with a greater plan. There were moments of fear, of questioning, of wondering if they were truly capable of fulfilling the destiny that had been set before them. But each time there was a gentle confirmation, a sense of peace that they were not alone, that God's hand was guiding them even when the path seemed unclear. Love entered their life as both challenge and blessing. The realization came that relationships were a reflection of the divine purpose within them. They learned to love not for personal satisfaction, but to uplift and support, to give courage and hope. The chosen life was never about self-interest, but about being a vessel for God's love in the world. Heartbreak, reconciliation, and joy all became lessons in the refinement of character, teaching that purpose is strengthened through both suffering and celebration. Career and community service became arenas of influence. Every action, from the smallest act of kindness to the most significant achievements, was colored by the awareness of divine selection. The young adult saw that being chosen before time was not a guarantee of worldly success, but a call to impact, to be a light in dark places, to carry hope where despair had settled. Through mentoring, helping the needy, and speaking truths that inspired faith, they began to understand the profound responsibility that comes with being chosen. Every life touched was a testimony to the unseen hand that had guided them from before time. The years continued, bringing both triumphs and trials. The chosen one faced moments of doubt, moments when the weight of expectation seemed unbearable. Yet, in those times, they remembered the quiet assurance of early years, the whisper of purpose that had always been present. Faith became not just a belief, but a living reality, a guide through storms, a beacon when the path was shadowed. They discovered that being chosen meant perseverance, courage, and the continual surrender to a plan far greater than personal understanding. Family life reflected the culmination of lessons learned. The child, now a parent, began to nurture the next generation with the wisdom of their journey. They understood that being chosen before time was not just a personal calling, but a legacy to inspire others. They taught children to seek purpose, to embrace challenges, to walk humbly, and to love profoundly. Through this, the story of divine selection passed from one life to another. A chain of grace and destiny stretching across generations. In later years, reflection brought clarity. Every joy, every sorrow, every victory and defeat had shaped the life into a tapestry of divine design. The chosen life was not defined by fame or fortune, but by faithfulness, by impact, by love poured out. There was a deep peace in knowing that every step, every choice, every heartache had been part of a plan written before time, a story guided by a creator whose wisdom surpasses human understanding. Ultimately, the story of being chosen before time is not just the story of one individual, but a reflection of God's love and purpose for all humanity. It is a reminder that every soul has a destiny, that trials are tools, that love is power, and that even in the smallest moments, the hand of the Creator is at work. To be chosen before time is to live with awareness, courage, and grace, knowing that life is not random, and that every heartbeat carries significance in the grand tapestry of eternity. This is the story of a life set apart, not by circumstance, but by divine intention. A life that reveals the beauty, the power, and the depth of being chosen before time. Sealed with the Spirit. A journey of faith. There has been a divine promise, a silent assurance whispered across eternity, that those who believe are not left to wander aimlessly, but are marked, protected, and guided by a power far greater than the world can understand. This is the story of being sealed with the Spirit, a journey of faith that transforms ordinary lives into extraordinary testimonies, a story of belonging, protection, and purpose that begins in the heart and ripples through every moment of life. The protagonist of this story was a young adult named Eliora, whose name meant God is my light. From early childhood, Eleora felt an unusual pull toward something beyond the visible world. While other children were captivated by games and toys, Eleora found solace in quiet reflection, staring at the sky, listening to the rustle of leaves, and feeling a strange comfort in moments of solitude. There was a voice, almost imperceptible at first, that whispered reassurance, a sense that she was not alone, that she belonged to a purpose far greater than her own understanding. Eleora's life was not without trials. Adolescence brought confusion, fear, and the temptation to conform to the world's expectations. There were days of doubt, when the heart questioned its own worth, and the mind wondered if the pull she felt was nothing but imagination. Friends turned away, teachers misunderstood, and circumstances seemed to collide in ways that left her feeling small and unseen. Yet, even in these moments, a subtle sense of being held by an invisible hand persisted. She could not explain it, but deep within her, she felt sealed, protected, and chosen, as if her very spirit carried a signature of God's promise. The turning point came when Eleora first learned about the Spirit in a quiet Sunday service at her local church. The sermon spoke of the Spirit as a seal, a guarantee, a divine mark that confirms a believer's place in God's family. As the words reached her ears, a flood of recognition washed over her. It was not a new concept, but a revelation of what had always been true. She understood that she was not alone, that she carried within her a power and presence that would guide, protect, and strengthen her in ways the world could never take away. Tears flowed freely, not of sorrow, but of awe and deep relief, as if a burden she had unknowingly carried had finally been lifted. From that day onward, Eleora's life began to change. The seal of the Spirit was not visible to the eyes, but its effects were evident in every aspect of her being. Fear that had once dominated her heart began to lose its grip. She approached challenges with a quiet confidence, knowing that her steps were ordered and her path secured. Decisions that once seemed overwhelming now carried clarity, and the inner voice of the Spirit became a constant companion, guiding, correcting, and comforting. Faith became a living reality, not just a concept she had learned from books or sermons. Each morning, Eleora would rise and speak to the Spirit, seeking wisdom, courage, and strength. She learned to recognize the gentle nudges that steered her toward kindness, patience, and integrity. Even in moments of temptation or doubt, she could sense the Spirit's presence, a reminder that she was not wandering alone, that her life had meaning, and that every act of obedience, however small, carried eternal significance. Eleora soon realized that being sealed with the Spirit was not only about personal guidance, but also about protection. Life presented trials that would have been overwhelming on her own moments of betrayal, sudden losses, and opportunities fraught with moral danger. Yet, each time, there was an unseen shield, a divine intervention that preserved her heart and mind. The seal was both promise and defense, a mark that kept her anchored in faith when circumstances threatened to pull her under. She understood that this protection was not a guarantee of a life free from struggle, but a guarantee of presence, of guidance, and of ultimate victory over despair. As her journey continued, Eliora's faith was refined through service. She discovered that the Spirit not only guides and protects, but empowers believers to be instruments of love, hope, and encouragement in the lives of others. She volunteered in her community, helping children, comforting the lonely, and standing for justice where she could. Every act of service, every word of encouragement, became a reflection of the Spirit's work within her, a living testimony of the divine seal. Through her actions, others began to see the light she carried, a light not of her own making, but a reflection of the Spirit's presence. Relationships became arenas of growth and grace. Friendships and family ties were tested, and conflicts arose that could have destroyed trust. Yet, with the guidance of the Spirit, Eliora learned forgiveness, patience, and empathy. She became a bridge where there was division, a source of calm where there was chaos, and a voice of truth where there was confusion. It became clear that the seal was not only for her protection, but for her purpose to carry God's presence into every interaction, every relationship, and every decision. Years passed, and Eliora faced greater challenges: career uncertainties, financial strain, and the loss of loved ones. Yet, through it all, the Spirit's seal remained unshaken. She realized that the seal was not a reward for perfection, but a reminder of divine presence. It was a source of peace in chaos, a wellspring of courage in fear, and a foundation for hope in despair. She learned to trust not in her own strength, but in the promise that the Spirit's guidance was constant and unfailing. In reflecting on her life, Eliora understood that being sealed with the Spirit was the ultimate act of love from God. It was a reminder that she was chosen, cherished, and empowered to live not for herself, but for a purpose that extended beyond her own understanding. Every step, every trial, every triumph was infused with meaning, and every day was an opportunity to walk in the Spirit's guidance. The story of Eliora's journey is not unique to her alone. It is a story for every believer, a testament to the power, presence, and promise of the Spirit. To be sealed is to be claimed, protected, and empowered. It is to know that life's challenges are not meaningless, that faith is not a solitary endeavor, and that every soul marked by the Spirit carries within it the certainty of divine guidance. Ultimately, the journey of being sealed with the Spirit is a call to trust, obedience, and courage. It is a call to recognize the invisible power at work within, to walk boldly in faith, and to embrace the purpose for which one was chosen. It is a journey that transforms ordinary lives into testimonies of divine presence, a story of hope, strength, and unwavering faith that carries believers through the storms of life and into the eternal embrace of God's love. The riches of grace, finding treasure in Christ long before a soul takes its first breath, before the mountains stand tall and the rivers carve their paths. There exists a wealth unlike any treasure found on earth, a wealth of grace, abundant, unearned, and eternal. This is the story of discovering that richness, of encountering a love so profound that it changes the course of a life. The story of a heart that learns to receive what cannot be bought, earned, or measured, the grace of God. The story begins with a young man named Josiah. From a small village, he grew up amidst struggles that weighed heavily on his family. Poverty, misunderstandings, and moments of despair were constant companions. From an early age, he felt the sting of judgment, the sharp edges of human failure, and the crushing reality of imperfection. He carried a heavy burden of shame, believing that his mistakes defined him, that the world measured him by his failures. Josiah's early attempts to find value were misdirected. He worked tirelessly, striving for approval from family, peers, and society. Every achievement brought only temporary satisfaction, every compliment fleeting relief. Deep within, he sensed that something was missing, that no effort of his own could fill the void he felt. Nights were the hardest lying awake. He wondered if there was a purpose, a reason, a light at the end of the dark path that seemed to stretch endlessly before him. It was in one quiet moment, during a walk through the fields near his home, that he first encountered the concept of grace. He had wandered into a small church service, seeking shelter from a sudden storm, and there he heard words that seemed to resonate directly with his weary soul. By grace you have been saved through faith. It is the gift of God, not of works. At first, he did not understand. He had always believed that worth was earned, that approval must be achieved. But something in those words struck him deeply in unfamiliar relief, a warmth that seemed to fill the hollow spaces of his heart. Over the following days, Josiah could not shake the thought. Grace, the word itself, was simple, yet it carried a universe of meaning. He realized that his life had been weighed down by striving, by the constant demand to prove himself. But grace promised a release, a freedom, a treasure that no one could take away. He began to study, to pray, and to seek understanding. Each moment of reflection revealed that the riches of grace were not distant or abstract, but deeply personal, meant for him in his imperfections, his struggles, and his failures. As he embraced this truth, his life began to transform. The burdens that had pressed upon his shoulders seemed lighter. Forgiveness, once unimaginable, became tangible. He understood that grace did not excuse mistakes, but it offered redemption. It did not remove consequences, but it provided a path forward. With every step, Josiah felt an inner peace, a certainty that he was valued not for what he did, but for who he was in God's eyes. The journey was not without challenges. Old habits, doubt, and fears tried to reclaim their hold. There were moments when he questioned whether he truly deserved such kindness, whether a life marked by errors could ever be embraced by love so profound. Yet, each time, the lessons of grace reminded him that its power was not contingent on perfection, that it was a gift freely given to those who believed, trusted, and received. Josiah learned to lean not on his own strength, but on the unshakable foundation of God's promise. The riches of grace began to overflow into relationships. Josiah discovered a new capacity for forgiveness, patience, and empathy. He approached family, friends, and even strangers with a gentleness born of understanding. Realizing that the grace he had received was meant to flow outward. Conflicts that once seemed insurmountable were softened by compassion. Wounds that lingered for years began to heal. He became a living testament to the transformative power of God's favor, showing through actions that grace was not just a concept, but a tangible force that shaped character, decisions, and interactions as adulthood approached. Opportunities arose that tested his understanding of grace. He faced injustice in the workplace, betrayal by a close friend, and setbacks that threatened to shake his faith. But with each trial, the inner wealth of God's grace provided strength and perspective. Josiah realized that grace was not a shield from hardship, but a companion through it. It was the quiet assurance that no matter the outcome, his value and purpose were secure, anchored in something eternal. Over time, Josiah's perspective on life changed entirely. He no longer measured success by possessions, accolades, or approval. Instead, he sought richness in character, depth in relationships, and purpose in service. The grace that had once freed him became a lens through which he viewed the world. Lens that illuminated hope where despair had lingered, love where anger had taken root, and peace where turmoil had reigned. He understood that true wealth was not in gold or silver, but in the mercy and favor of God, a treasure stored in the heart, eternal and unshakable. In reflection, Josiah realized that discovering the riches of grace was a journey, not a single event. It required surrender, trust, and a willingness to be transformed. It demanded letting go of self-reliance and embracing dependence on a love that cannot be earned or measured. And yet, it was a journey worth every step, for the treasure it revealed was beyond all earthly comparison. It was a wealth that endured through storms, a light that never faded, a peace that surpassed understanding. The story of Josiah is a story for all who seek meaning, hope, and purpose. It is a reminder that life's greatest treasure is not earned by effort, but received by faith. The riches of grace are abundant, freely given, and transformative. They turn brokenness into wholeness, despair into hope, and ordinary lives into testimonies of God's love. Ultimately, the story teaches that to find the treasure of grace is to discover the heart of God Himself. It is to know that no failure can diminish worth, no trial can erase purpose, and no darkness can overcome the light of divine favor. In Christ, grace becomes the eternal currency of the soul, a richness that no earthly possession can rival, a story of love and redemption that transforms lives from the inside out. Mystery revealed: God's plan for unity in a world divided by differences. Torn by conflict and fractured by misunderstanding, there exists a truth so profound, so transformative, that it can bridge every divide, heal every wound, and restore every broken heart. This is the story of God's plan for unity, a mystery that was hidden for ages but revealed through love, grace, and divine purpose. It is the story of people brought together, not by coincidence, but by design, to create a harmony that transcends human understanding. The story begins in a city bustling with life, where people of different cultures, beliefs, and backgrounds coexisted but rarely connected. Among them was a man named Elias, a thoughtful individual who felt the weight of division pressing on his heart. He saw neighbors arguing over trivial matters, friends severing ties over misunderstandings, and communities fractured by prejudice and fear. Though life went on around him, he longed for something deeper, a way to reconcile differences, to bring people together, and to witness a harmony that reflected the heart of God. Elias's journey toward understanding unity began when he encountered a small group gathering in a local community center. People from different walks of life, young and old, rich and poor, believers and seekers, had come together simply to listen, to learn, and to share. There was a quiet warmth in the room, an openness that transcended labels, and a sense of purpose that immediately drew him in. It was here that he first heard the concept of unity as revealed in Scripture, that through Christ all divisions could be reconciled, and all people could find a shared identity rooted not in circumstance or ethnicity, but in divine love. The words struck Elias deeply. He realized that unity was not merely the absence of conflict, but the presence of purpose. It was a calling to see beyond surface differences, to recognize the shared humanity in every individual, and to participate in the unfolding plan of God, which sought to weave disparate lives into a harmonious whole. The idea that God had a specific, intentional design for unity challenged Elias's thinking. Division, he now understood, was not inevitable. Reconciliation and collaboration were possible when hearts embraced the divine plan. Life began to present opportunities for Elias to apply this newfound understanding. He first started with small gestures, reaching out to neighbors he had previously ignored, listening patiently to differing perspectives, and offering help without expectation. Each act of kindness became a thread in the growing tapestry of connection. Slowly, walls that had seemed permanent began to crumble. People started to see one another differently, not as strangers or opponents, but as fellow travelers on a shared journey, each carrying a spark of divine purpose. The true test of this unity, however, came during a community crisis. A natural disaster struck the city, displacing families, destroying homes, and creating an urgent need for cooperation and compassion. Amidst the chaos, old rivalries and prejudices threatened to surface. Yet Elias and others who had embraced the message of unity stepped forward. They organized relief efforts, bringing together individuals from every part of the community, regardless of past differences. Strangers became allies, former adversaries became collaborators, and slowly a sense of shared purpose emerged. Through these experiences, Elias came to understand the depth of God's plan. Unity was not superficial agreement. It was a spiritual alignment of hearts and minds under a higher purpose. It required humility, patience, and a willingness to listen, to forgive, and to serve. He learned that unity did not erase individuality or differences, but instead celebrated them within the framework of shared faith, respect, and divine guidance. The mystery, once hidden, revealed itself in lived experience. God's design was for a community bound by love, strengthened by diversity, and guided by a common purpose. Elias's own life was transformed through this journey. He became a bridge between conflicting groups, a voice of reconciliation, and a source of encouragement for those struggling to find common ground. He learned to embrace challenges as opportunities for growth, recognizing that each disagreement or misunderstanding was a chance to practice patience, empathy, and grace. The unity he fostered was not forced, but cultivated through intentional acts of love, trust, and cooperation. Over time, the ripple effects of this unity became evident. Families healed, friendships deepened, and the community experienced a renewed sense of hope and purpose. Children grew up witnessing cooperation and compassion as the norm rather than the exception. Business partnerships flourished because trust replaced suspicion. The city, once fragmented, began to embody the harmony that God intended, a living demonstration of the power of His revealed plan. Yet, Elias understood that unity is never a one-time achievement. It is a continuous process. It requires vigilance, prayer, and deliberate action. Conflicts arise, misunderstandings occur, and human nature often leans toward division. But the knowledge that God's plan for unity is active and purposeful provided Elias with strength and determination. He came to see that each act of reconciliation, each effort to understand another's perspective, and each moment of shared purpose was a fulfillment of a divine promise that had existed since the beginning of time. The story of Elias is a story for every community, every group, and every individual. It is a reminder that division is not inevitable, that reconciliation is possible, and that God's plan is to bring together lives in a way that reflects His heart. True unity is born not from conformity, but from love. It is sustained not by force, but by commitment. And it is revealed not in theory, but in action. In reflecting on his journey, Elias realized that the mystery of God's plan had been revealed not in grand gestures, but in countless small acts of love, service, and understanding. It was present in conversations where people truly listened, in hands that reached out to help, and in hearts willing to forgive and accept. The unity he witnessed and participated in was a testament to God's enduring purpose that transcends human limitations, heals wounds, and creates harmony from diversity. Ultimately, mystery revealed, God's plan for unity is a story of hope, faith, and action. It teaches that through deliberate love, compassion, and a commitment to reconciliation, the divine design of unity can manifest in the world. It reminds us that while the mystery may once have been hidden, it is now revealed for those willing to seek, serve, and walk in the path of God's love, creating a life and community marked by harmony, peace, and shared purpose. Heavenly inheritance, the story of our destiny from the moment a child opens their eyes to the world. There is a longing deep within the human heart, longing for significance, for belonging, for a place where love, security, and purpose converge. This is the story of heavenly inheritance, of a destiny crafted by God long before time began, a promise so profound that it shapes lives, inspires hope, and sustains the soul through every trial. It is the tale of discovering that life is not random, that each heartbeat carries meaning, and that every step taken in faith moves toward a treasure far greater than any earthly possession. The story begins with a young man named Caleb. From an early age, Caleb felt both the joy and the uncertainty of life. His family loved him, yet circumstances were often challenging. He witnessed injustice, felt the sting of disappointment, and wrestled with questions about his place in the world. In quiet moments, he would gaze at the sky and wonder if there was a plan for his life, if his existence held a purpose beyond the struggles and chaos around him. One day, while walking through the marketplace, Caleb encountered an old man sitting beneath a tree, reading from a weathered scroll. Curious, he approached and asked what the writing was about. The old man smiled and said, "It speaks of a promise, a gift prepared for those who walk in faith, a heavenly inheritance, unspoiled and eternal." Caleb listened intently as the man explained that every believer has a destiny designed by God, a treasure stored not in earthly wealth, but in spiritual blessing and eternal purpose. The words resonated deeply, igniting a spark of hope in Caleb's heart. Intrigued, Caleb began to study and reflect. He learned that heavenly inheritance is not earned by deeds alone, nor is it granted by human merit. It is a gift, a divine promise, secured by faith and guided by God's wisdom. The realization was transformative. For the first time, Caleb understood that life's challenges were not meaningless obstacles, but opportunities to prepare for something eternal. Every hardship, every disappointment, every act of patience and faithfulness became part of the process, shaping his character and aligning him with the inheritance that awaited. Caleb's journey was not without trials. As he grew, he faced moments of fear, doubt, and discouragement. Friends turned away, opportunities seemed lost, and the pressures of life threatened to overwhelm him. Yet, the promise of heavenly inheritance became an anchor, a source of strength that reminded him that his identity and future were secure in God's hands. He learned to navigate life not with anxiety or fear, but with faith, trusting that each step, even those that seemed uncertain, was leading him closer to the fulfillment of a divine plan. In his 20s, Caleb encountered moments that tested his understanding of this inheritance. He experienced betrayal from those he trusted, financial setbacks that challenged his resolve, and emotional struggles that threatened to cloud his hope. In these moments, he turned to prayer and reflection, seeking guidance and reassurance. It was then that he realized inheritance is not merely about reward, but about preparation. God's plan for him was not just about what he would receive, but who he would become through the journey. The trials were shaping patience, perseverance, humility, and faith qualities that would allow him to fully embrace the inheritance prepared for him. relationships played a vital role in Caleb's growth. Mentors, friends, and family guided, corrected, and encouraged him. Some were companions in faith, walking alongside him and sharing wisdom gained through experience. Others were challenges, testing his character and teaching him lessons in forgiveness, empathy, and resilience. Caleb discovered that heavenly inheritance was intertwined with community, that destiny is realized not in isolation, but in the way one interacts, loves, and uplifts others. Each connection became a thread in the tapestry of his life, weaving together a story of growth, grace, and divine purpose. As Caleb matured, he began to recognize the broader significance of heavenly inheritance. It was not simply a personal reward, but a calling to impact the world. Every act of service, every moment of compassion, every decision made in faith contributed to the fulfillment of a destiny designed to bring light into darkness. He became a source of encouragement to others, sharing his journey and the lessons he had learned, inspiring those around him to trust in God's promises and to embrace their own path toward eternal blessing, the wealth of heavenly inheritance. Caleb realized is not measured in gold or possessions, but in peace, joy, purpose, and alignment with God's will. It is a richness that endures beyond life's trials, a treasure that cannot be lost, and a promise that sustains through the uncertainties of the present. Every act of faith, every moment of trust, and every choice to live according to divine guidance strengthens the soul, preparing it to receive the full measure of the inheritance that has been secured since before time began. In reflection, Caleb understood that the journey toward heavenly inheritance requires patience, faith, and unwavering trust. It demands surrender of pride, reliance on divine wisdom, and a willingness to walk even when the path is unclear. It requires the heart to remain steadfast through trials, the spirit to forgive, and the courage to live according to God's purpose rather than human expectation. In doing so, one experiences not only the promise of future blessing, but the present reality of peace, joy, and fulfillment. The story of Caleb is a story for all who seek meaning, hope, and assurance in life. It is a reminder that no matter the challenges, setbacks, or uncertainties, there exists a destiny prepared by God, a heavenly inheritance secured by grace, and a purpose designed to bring glory, fulfillment, and eternal joy. To embrace this inheritance is to recognize that life is not random, that each step has meaning, and that every act of faith contributes to a story written by the Creator from eternity. Ultimately, heavenly inheritance, the story of our destiny, teaches that true richness is found not in earthly achievement, but in alignment with God's purpose. it is a journey of growth, perseverance, and trust, a journey that transforms ordinary lives into testimonies of eternal hope and fulfillment. The inheritance awaits, and every step of faith draws the believer closer to the promise, revealing a destiny designed in love, guided by wisdom, and secured for eternity. Strengthened in the inner man, facing life's battles, life has a way of testing the heart, challenging the mind, and stretching the soul beyond what seems bearable. Every person encounters battles, some visible, others hidden within the deepest corners of the spirit. This is the story of being strengthened in the inner man, of discovering a resilience that comes not from human effort alone, but from a power far greater than the circumstances we face. It is a tale of courage, faith, and transformation, where the battles of life become the forge in which character and spirit are refined. The story begins with a young woman named Hannah. She grew up in a modest home, filled with love, but not without hardship. From an early age, Hannah faced challenges that tested her resolve. Family illnesses, financial struggles, and social pressures made life seem heavy. And yet, there was a quiet determination in her heart that refused to be extinguished. She sensed an inner strength waiting to be discovered, a power that could carry her through difficulties she could not yet imagine. As Hannah entered her teenage years, life's battles became more personal and intense. She struggled with self-doubt, the fear of failure, and the weight of expectations from herself, her family, and society. Friends sometimes betrayed her trust, and moments of loneliness deepened her awareness of vulnerability. Yet, even in these times, she felt a subtle assurance within, a whisper that encouraged her to hold on, to trust, and to seek strength beyond what she could see or understand. It was during a particularly challenging season, when illness struck a beloved family member and Hannah's own future seemed uncertain, that she first discovered the concept of being strengthened in the inner man. Through quiet prayer, reflection, and reading scripture, she realized that her inner being, the soul, the spirit, the essence of who she was, could be fortified by faith. Strength did not come merely from external circumstances, abilities, or accomplishments, but from the presence of God dwelling within her, providing courage, peace, and perseverance. Hannah began to cultivate this inner strength deliberately. She spent time in prayer each day, seeking guidance and resilience. She meditated on verses that reminded her of God's power, protection, and love. She journaled her fears and hopes, giving voice to the struggles that once weighed silently on her heart. Slowly, she noticed a transformation. Situations that had previously felt insurmountable became opportunities to lean on the inner power that God provided. The battles did not disappear, but her response to them changed. Where there was fear, there was now courage. Where there was despair, there was hope. Where there was uncertainty, there was confidence rooted in faith. Hannah's journey also revealed the role of perseverance in strengthening the inner man. Life continued to bring challenges, academic pressures, strained friendships, and unexpected setbacks. Each test became a chance to apply faith, to practice patience, and to act with integrity despite difficulty. She learned that resilience is built not in moments of comfort, but in moments of struggle. Each decision to trust, each act of patience, each step forward in the face of fear became a brick in the foundation of inner strength. The power of being strengthened in the inner man also manifested in Hannah's interactions with others. She became a source of encouragement and hope for friends and family facing their own battles. Her calmness in crisis, her ability to speak words of wisdom, and her demonstration of faith inspired those around her. They began to see that true strength is not always visible, that it is cultivated quietly within, and that it has the power to influence and uplift others in profound ways. Hannah also discovered that inner strength is closely tied to humility and reliance on God. It was not a prideful confidence or self-reliance, but a surrender to divine guidance that allowed her to face challenges with courage. She realized that the inner man is strengthened when one acknowledges weakness and seeks God's power, when one trusts not in personal abilities alone, but in the unseen source that equips the soul to endure, persevere, and triumph over time. Hannah faced some of the greatest trials of her life: serious accident that left her temporarily disabled, loss of a close friend, and unexpected career obstacles. Each challenge tested every lesson she had learned. Yet, the inner strength she had cultivated proved unwavering. Through prayer, reflection, and reliance on God, she endured, overcame, and emerged stronger than before. She realized that life's battles, while difficult, had been the instruments of her growth, shaping her into a person capable of resilience, compassion, and courage. Hannah's story also highlights the role of perspective in strengthening the inner man. She learned to see challenges not as punishments or setbacks, but as opportunities for growth, character development, and deeper intimacy with God. This shift in perspective allowed her to face trials with hope rather than despair, knowing that each difficulty carried purpose and meaning. She discovered that true strength is not the absence of struggle, but the ability to navigate life's storms with faith, courage, and perseverance. In reflecting on her journey, Hannah understood that being strengthened in the inner man is a lifelong process. It requires daily nurturing through prayer, meditation, reflection, and acts of faith. It requires courage to face difficulties, humility to rely on God, and perseverance to continue walking even when the path is unclear. Each moment of struggle becomes an opportunity to grow, each trial a chance to be molded, and each victory a testimony to the power of faith and inner resilience. The story of Hannah is a story for every person who faces life's battles, whether seen or unseen. It is a reminder that true strength is cultivated within. That reliance on God transforms fear into courage, and that the inner man, fortified by faith, can endure trials, inspire others, and leave a legacy of resilience. Life's battles are inevitable, but the power to overcome them is available to all who seek it. Nurture it and trust in God's presence within. Ultimately, strengthened in the inner man, facing life's battles is a story of courage, faith, and transformation. It teaches that true resilience comes from the soul fortified by divine presence, and that every struggle, setback, and trial is an opportunity to grow stronger in spirit. It is a journey that turns ordinary endurance into extraordinary testimony, showing that the battles of life, when faced with faith and reliance on God, become the very tools that shape character, courage, and an unshakable inner strength. Called to Holiness, a story of transformation from the dawn of creation. God's desire has been for humanity to reflect His character, to live in alignment with His purpose, and to walk in holiness, a life set apart from the ordinary, guided by divine principles, and marked by integrity, love, and faithfulness. This is the story of a life transformed by the call to holiness, a journey of surrender, growth, and discovery, where the ordinary is made extraordinary through devotion, discipline, and divine guidance. The story begins with a young woman named Leora. She grew up in a bustling city, surrounded by distractions, temptations, and constant noise. Life seemed to move swiftly around her, and she often felt pulled in multiple directions, caught between societal pressures, personal desires, and the quiet whisper of something greater calling her heart. Even as a teenager, she sensed an inner longing for purpose, a desire to live in a way that mattered beyond fleeting moments. Leora's first encounter with the call to holiness was subtle. During a quiet evening at her family home, she stumbled upon a small, worn book of scriptures. Flipping through the pages, she came across verses speaking of living a life set apart, of pursuing purity, righteousness, and devotion to God. The words resonated deeply, stirring something dormant within her spirit. She realized that holiness was not a distant ideal or a set of rigid rules. It was an invitation to transformation, a path that promised life, purpose, and peace to those willing to walk it. Initially, Leora struggled to understand what this meant for her daily life. The world around her offered distractions, quick gratifications, and values that often conflicted with the principles she was beginning to embrace. She faced peer pressure, societal expectations, and her own inner battles. Yet, the call to holiness continued to whisper in her heart, urging her to make choices that aligned with her faith rather than fleeting desires. Each decision became a test, a step toward transformation, and a reflection of her commitment to a life set apart. The journey was not easy. Leora faced moments of temptation, doubt, and failure. She would sometimes give in to fear, pride, or impatience, only to feel the weight of her choices and the need to return to the path of holiness. But with each stumble, she learned that transformation is a process, not an instant change. God's call to holiness was patient, guiding her gently through mistakes, teaching her resilience, humility, and dependence on His strength. She discovered that holiness is cultivated through intentionality, through prayer, reflection, discipline, and acts of integrity that align life with divine principles. As Leora grew, she began to see the impact of her transformed life on those around her. Friends and family noticed a quiet confidence, a peace that seemed to radiate from within. She became a source of encouragement, a living example of how devotion, obedience, and faithfulness could shape character and inspire others. Even in small interactions, helping a neighbor, offering a listening ear, showing patience in frustration, she reflected the transformative power of holiness. Her life became a testament that a person set apart can influence the world without seeking recognition or reward. The call to holiness also demanded courage. There were times when Leora's choices conflicted with popular opinion, cultural norms, or even the expectations of those she loved. Choosing integrity over compromise, truth over convenience, and service over self-interest required strength she did not always feel she possessed. Yet, each decision to remain faithful, even when it was difficult, strengthened her spirit and deepened her understanding of what it meant to live a life aligned with God's design. She realized that holiness was not about perfection, but about intentional, consistent devotion, choosing righteousness over ease, love over indifference, and faith over fear. Through her journey, Leora experienced the profound joy of transformation. The inner conflicts that once caused anxiety and unrest gradually gave way to peace, clarity, and purpose. Her identity became rooted not in achievements, social approval, or material gain, but in her relationship with God and her commitment to live according to His principles. The call to holiness reshaped her thoughts, her choices, and her perspective, giving her a vision of life that transcended the temporary and embraced the eternal. Holiness also revealed the importance of community and accountability. Leora sought out mentors, friends, and faith communities that nurtured her growth, provided guidance, and encouraged perseverance. She discovered that transformation is strengthened when shared with others who walked the path faithfully, offering support, wisdom, and inspiration. The journey was never meant to be solitary. It was a collective pursuit of God's vision, a shared commitment to live lives that honor Him and impact others positively. Over time, Leora faced challenges that tested every lesson she had learned: career setbacks, personal losses, and moments of intense doubt. Yet, the principles of holiness that had taken root in her life provided strength and clarity. She approached difficulties with patience, wisdom, and faith, understanding that every trial was an opportunity to deepen her character, trust in God, and embody the transformation she had embraced. Her life became a living testimony that the pursuit of holiness shapes not only the individual but also the world around them. In reflecting on her journey, Leora realized that being called to holiness is a lifelong process. It is a continuous commitment to align thoughts, actions, and intentions with divine principles. It requires humility, courage, and perseverance, and it is strengthened through prayer, study, and community. Holiness is not merely a goal to be reached, but a journey that transforms the heart, mind, and spirit, producing a life of integrity, love, and purpose. The story of Leora is a story for everyone who longs to live a meaningful, purposeful life. It reminds us that holiness is not about rigid perfection, but about transformation, intentionality, and devotion. It shows that a life set apart, guided by God's principles, has the power to influence others, bring peace in chaos, and reveal the beauty of a spirit aligned with divine purpose. Ultimately, called to holiness, a story of transformation, teaches that true transformation comes when one responds to God's invitation to live a life set apart. It is a journey of surrender, growth, and devotion, where the ordinary becomes extraordinary, character is refined, and life reflects the heart of God. Those who embrace this call discover not only personal transformation, but also the ability to inspire, uplift, and bring light to a world in need of guidance, love, and righteousness. One body, one spirit, lessons in unity, every community, family, and organization. There exists a need for connection, harmony, and shared purpose. Yet, all too often, divisions arise, differences of opinion, misunderstandings, and personal ambitions fracture what could be a unified whole. This is the story of learning to live as one body, guided by one spirit, a journey of understanding, collaboration, and the transformative power of unity in diversity. The story begins with a man named Asher, who worked in a bustling city hospital. Each day, he witnessed people from diverse backgrounds, patients, doctors, nurses, and support staff, each carrying unique experiences, beliefs, and expectations. While everyone shared the common goal of caring for those in need, conflicts were frequent. Miscommunication, competing priorities, and personal egos often hindered progress, leaving Asher frustrated and disheartened. One day, while attending a small church service after a long shift, Asher heard a sermon that would change his perspective forever. The preacher spoke of the human body, how each part has a role and purpose, and how, though different, all parts work together for the good of the whole. We are one body, the preacher said, and one spirit unites us. Each member matters, each gift has a purpose, and together we reflect God's design. These words struck a chord in Asher's heart. He realized that unity was not uniformity, and that the diversity he had seen as a challenge could become a strength if guided by understanding, respect, and shared vision. Inspired, Asher began to approach his work and relationships differently. He started by listening more intently to colleagues, seeking to understand their perspectives rather than dismissing them. He acknowledged contributions from all team members, no matter how small, and emphasized collaboration over competition. Slowly, he noticed subtle changes. Conversations became more constructive. Conflicts were resolved more peacefully, and a sense of mutual respect began to grow. He realized that living as one body required intentionality, a deliberate choice to act in ways that honor others, while working toward a shared purpose. The lessons of unity were tested. During a critical emergency at the hospital, a major accident brought in dozens of injured patients at once, overwhelming the staff and straining resources. Previously, such a situation might have led to chaos, with miscommunication and frustration threatening patient care. But this time, Asher observed a remarkable difference. Colleagues coordinated efficiently, each person stepping into their role, recognizing the value of others and supporting one another. The crisis was managed with a sense of harmony that transcended personal differences. In that moment, Asher understood the power of being guided by one spirit, the invisible thread that aligns hearts, strengthens teamwork, and enables collective success even under extreme pressure. Unity, Asher discovered, also required humility and forgiveness. Differences of opinion, misunderstandings, and occasional mistakes were inevitable. However, choosing to forgive, to accept shortcomings, and to focus on the greater purpose prevented division from taking root. He learned that the Spirit fosters patience, empathy, and a willingness to prioritize the common good over personal pride. Living as one body meant that individual recognition was less important than the collective mission, and that true leadership often involves empowering others rather than seeking personal accolades. As Asher's understanding deepened, he saw that unity is strengthened by recognizing and celebrating differences. Each colleague brought unique skills, perspectives, and experiences that, when combined, enhanced the overall functioning of the team. Differences were no longer barriers, but opportunities for learning, growth, and synergy. He began to encourage collaboration, facilitate communication, and create spaces where each voice could be heard. The result was a team that operated with cohesion, resilience, and mutual respect, reflecting the spiritual principle that many members, though different, form one harmonious body. The impact of this approach extended beyond the hospital walls. Asher applied the principles of unity in his personal life, with family and friends. He sought to understand perspectives that differed from his own, listened patiently, and embraced reconciliation where conflict had occurred. Relationships that had been strained for years began to heal as he practiced empathy, humility, and shared purpose. He realized that the call to unity is universal, applies wherever people gather. Whether in professional settings, social circles, or communities of faith. Over time, Asher became a leader not by position, but by example. Colleagues, friends, and family saw in him a model of collaboration, patience, and servant leadership. He demonstrated that true unity does not suppress individuality, but coordinates it, guiding diverse contributions toward a common goal. The Spirit, he discovered, is the unseen force that maintains alignment, fosters harmony, and inspires collective action for the greater good. In reflection, Asher understood that living as one body with one spirit is both a privilege and a responsibility. It requires continual self-examination, the willingness to submit personal desires for the benefit of others, and a commitment to fostering understanding, respect, and cooperation. Every action, word, and decision carries the potential to strengthen or weaken the bonds that hold a community together. By choosing unity, individuals contribute to a living testimony of God's design, demonstrating that diverse people, when guided by one Spirit, can achieve extraordinary harmony and impact. The story of Asher is a story for all who seek to live in community, to foster collaboration, and to embrace the transformative power of unity. It is a reminder that every person has a role. Every contribution matters, and together, guided by God's Spirit, we can create harmony, resilience, and purpose that surpasses what any individual could achieve alone. Ultimately, one body, one spirit, lessons in unity teaches that unity is not uniformity, nor is it easy. It is an intentional, spirit-led pursuit that harmonizes differences, empowers individuals, and strengthens communities. Through humility, patience, and collaboration, the diverse members of a body can reflect the heart of God, achieve collective purpose, and experience the profound fulfillment of walking together in love, understanding, and shared destiny. One body, one spirit. Lessons in unity in every community, family, and organization. There exists a need for connection, harmony, and shared purpose. Yet, all too often, divisions arise, differences of opinion, misunderstandings, and personal ambitions fracture what could be a unified whole. This is the story of learning to live as one body, guided by one spirit. A journey of understanding, collaboration, and the transformative power of unity in diversity. The story begins with a man named Asher, who worked in a bustling city hospital. Each day, he witnessed people from diverse backgrounds, patients, doctors, nurses, and support staff, each carrying unique experiences, beliefs, and expectations, while everyone shared the common goal of caring for those in need. Conflicts were frequent. Miscommunication, competing priorities, and personal egos often hindered progress, leaving Asher frustrated and disheartened. One day, while attending a small church service after a long shift, Asher heard a sermon that would change his perspective forever. The preacher spoke of the human body, how each part has a role and purpose, and how, though different, all parts work together for the good of the whole. We are one body, the preacher said, and one spirit unites us. Each member matters, each gift has a purpose, and together we reflect God's design. These words struck a chord in Asher's heart. He realized that unity was not uniformity, and that the diversity he had seen as a challenge could become a strength if guided by understanding, respect, and shared vision. Inspired, Asher began to approach his work and relationships differently. He started by listening more intently to colleagues, seeking to understand their perspectives rather than dismissing them. He acknowledged contributions from all team members, no matter how small, and emphasized collaboration over competition. Slowly, he noticed subtle changes. Conversations became more constructive, conflicts were resolved more peacefully, and a sense of mutual respect began to grow. He realized that living as one body required intentionality, a deliberate choice to act in ways that honor others, while working toward a shared purpose. The lessons of unity were tested. During a critical emergency at the hospital, a major accident brought in dozens of injured patients at once, overwhelming the staff and straining resources. Previously, such a situation might have led to chaos, with miscommunication and frustration threatening patient care. But this time, Asher observed a remarkable difference. Colleagues coordinated efficiently, each person stepping into their role, recognizing the value of others and supporting one another. The crisis was managed with a sense of harmony that transcended personal differences. In that moment, Asher understood the power of being guided by one Spirit, the invisible thread that aligns hearts, strengthens teamwork, and enables collective success even under extreme pressure. Unity. Asher discovered also required humility and forgiveness. Differences of opinion, misunderstandings, and occasional mistakes were inevitable. However, choosing to forgive, to accept shortcomings, and to focus on the greater purpose prevented division from taking root. He learned that the Spirit fosters patience, empathy, and a willingness to prioritize the common good over personal pride. Living as one body meant that individual recognition was less important than the collective mission, and that true leadership often involves empowering others rather than seeking personal accolades. As Asher's understanding deepened, he saw that unity is strengthened by recognizing and celebrating differences. Each colleague brought unique skills, perspectives, and experiences that, when combined, enhanced the overall functioning of the team. Differences were no longer barriers, but opportunities for learning, growth, and synergy. He began to encourage collaboration, facilitate communication, and create spaces where each voice could be heard. The result was a team that operated with cohesion, resilience, and mutual respect, reflecting the spiritual principle that many members, though different, form one harmonious body. The impact of this approach extended beyond the hospital walls. Asher applied the principles of unity in his personal life with family and friends. He sought to understand perspectives that differed from his own, listened patiently, and embraced reconciliation where conflict had occurred. Relationships that had been strained for years began to heal as he practiced empathy, humility, and shared purpose. He realized that the call to unity is universal. It applies wherever people gather, whether in professional settings, social circles, or communities of faith. Over time, Asher became a leader not by position, but by example. Colleagues, friends, and family saw in him a model of collaboration, patience, and servant leadership. He demonstrated that true unity does not suppress individuality, but coordinates it, guiding diverse contributions toward a common goal. The Spirit, he discovered, is the unseen force that maintains alignment, fosters harmony, and inspires collective action for the greater good. In reflection, Asher understood that living as one body with one Spirit is both a privilege and a responsibility. It requires continual self-examination, the willingness to submit personal desires for the benefit of others, and a commitment to fostering understanding, respect, and cooperation. Every action, word, and decision carries the potential to strengthen or weaken the bonds that hold a community together. By choosing unity, individuals contribute to a living testimony of God's design, demonstrating that diverse people, when guided by one Spirit, can achieve extraordinary harmony and impact. The story of Asher is a story for all who seek to live in community, to foster collaboration, and to embrace the transformative power of unity. It is a reminder that every person has a role. Every contribution matters, and together, guided by God's Spirit, we can create harmony, resilience, and purpose that surpasses what any individual could achieve alone. Ultimately, one body, one spirit, lessons in unity teaches that unity is not uniformity. Nor is it easy. It is an intentional, spirit-led pursuit that harmonizes differences, empowers individuals, and strengthens communities through humility, patience, and collaboration. The diverse members of a body can reflect the heart of God, achieve collective purpose, and experience the profound fulfillment of walking together in love, understanding, and shared destiny. The power of prayer, a story of connection in a world full of noise, distractions, and constant motion. There exists a quiet force that can transform lives, heal hearts, and bridge the gap between the human and the divine. This is the story of the power of prayer, connection that transcends circumstances, speaks to the heart of God, and strengthens the soul in ways that are unseen but profoundly real. It is a tale of intimacy, trust, and the transformative impact of seeking God with a sincere heart. The story begins with a young woman named Selah. She grew up in a bustling city, surrounded by people and activities, yet often felt an emptiness she could not explain. Life moved swiftly around her, filled with obligations, distractions, and fleeting pleasures. Despite success in school and approval from friends and family, Selah felt a persistent longing, a sense that something essential was missing. She yearned for connection, not just with people, but with something greater, a presence that could anchor her heart and provide guidance, hope, and comfort. Her introduction to prayer came unexpectedly. During a quiet morning walk in a park, she noticed an elderly woman sitting beneath a tree, whispering words that seemed both personal and profound. Curious, Selah approached and asked about what she was doing. The woman smiled warmly and explained, "I am talking to God. Prayer is the bridge between our hearts and His. It is where worries are lifted, guidance is found, and peace is given." Selah listened, intrigued by the simplicity and depth of the statement. The idea that she could speak directly to God, sharing her fears, hopes, and desires, was both comforting and revolutionary. Selah began experimenting with prayer, initially uncertain of what to say or how to feel. At first, it felt awkward, almost like talking into the void. Yet, as she persisted, she noticed subtle changes. Her thoughts became calmer, her anxiety less oppressive, and her perspective began to shift. Prayer, she realized, was not a ritual or a formula, but a personal connection, a conversation of the heart that opened channels of trust, faith, and understanding. Life soon presented Scylla with challenges that tested the depth of her prayer life. Academic pressure intensified, friendships became strained, and her family faced health crises that left her feeling powerless. In moments of fear and doubt, she turned to prayer, seeking guidance, strength, and clarity. She discovered that the power of prayer was not necessarily in immediate answers, but in the presence of God's peace, the courage to act rightly, and the comfort of knowing she was heard. Each prayer, each whispered plea, or heartfelt conversation strengthened her spirit and provided a foundation to navigate life's trials. Scylla's journey also revealed that prayer is transformative, not only for the one praying, but for those around them. She began praying for friends who were struggling, family members facing challenges, and even strangers in need. Over time, she noticed changes. Relationships were healed, conflicts resolved, and guidance appeared in unexpected ways. Prayer became a channel through which divine influence flowed into her life and the lives of others, creating connections that transcended human effort. She understood that the power of prayer lies not in its ability to control circumstances, but in its ability to align the heart with God, to strengthen faith, and to inspire action grounded in love. A pivotal moment came when Scylla faced a personal crisis, serious accident that left her temporarily immobilized. Fear, frustration, and uncertainty threatened to overwhelm her. In the hospital, she began to pray with intensity and sincerity, pouring out her fears, hopes, and desires to God. In the quiet of her heart, she experienced a profound sense of calm, a reassurance that transcended understanding. Though the recovery was difficult, she felt guided, supported, and strengthened in ways that gave her courage and resilience. She realized that prayer had connected her to a source of power far greater than her circumstances, a source that sustained her through pain, fear, and doubt. Through her experiences, Scylla also learned the importance of persistence and faith in prayer. Not every request was answered immediately, and not every situation resolved according to her expectations. Yet, she discovered that continued connection, patience, and trust in God deepened her faith, refined her character, and cultivated perseverance. Prayer became a discipline, a lifeline, and a source of insight that shaped her decisions, relationships, and outlook on life. The story of Scylla illustrates that the power of prayer is multifaceted. It is a source of comfort in loneliness, a guide in uncertainty, a catalyst for change, and a bridge of connection to the divine. Prayer nurtures humility, teaches reliance on God, and opens the heart to discernment and wisdom. It transforms fear into courage, anxiety into peace, and confusion into clarity. Through prayer, Selah experienced a profound intimacy with God, discovering that her life was not merely a series of random events, but a journey guided, supported, and sustained by a loving presence in reflection. Selah realized that the practice of prayer had changed her fundamentally. She had become more patient, empathetic, and attuned to the needs of others. She saw the interconnections in life, understanding that her prayers were part of a larger tapestry of divine purpose. The power of prayer was evident not only in answered requests, but in the transformation of her heart, the strength of her spirit, and the guidance she received in navigating life's challenges. The story of Selah is a story for all who long for connection, guidance, and spiritual strength. It is a reminder that prayer is not a ritual to be performed out of obligation, but a living, dynamic relationship that shapes character, provides clarity, and sustains hope. The act of opening one's heart to God creates a channel for divine presence, offering peace, courage, and the assurance that no life is ever truly alone. Ultimately, the power of prayer, a story of connection, teaches that prayer is transformative, intimate, and essential. It connects the human heart to the divine, strengthens faith, nurtures resilience, and inspires action rooted in love and purpose. Those who embrace prayer discover not only guidance and comfort, but also a life enriched by the enduring presence of God, a life that reflects the power of connection, trust, and divine intimacy in every circumstance. Seated in heavenly places. A story of authority is often misunderstood in the world. Many see it as power over others, control, or dominance. Yet, there exists a higher authority, one that is granted not through ambition or human effort, but through grace, faith, and a relationship with God. This is the story of being seated in heavenly places, a journey of discovering spiritual identity and the power to walk in divine purpose on earth. The story begins with a young man named Micah. He had grown up in a community where success was measured by status, wealth, and influence. From an early age, he observed that people sought power to control, impress, or command others. While he admired some aspects of leadership, he often felt a disconnect. Something within him longed for a different kind of authority, one rooted not in fear, pressure, or comparison, but in purpose, alignment with God, and spiritual truth. Micah's first encounter with the concept of heavenly authority came during a quiet evening in his room. He was reading scripture when he came across passages that spoke of being seated with Christ in heavenly places. At first, the words were mysterious. How could one be seated in a realm unseen, above challenges, struggles, and the pressures of life. The more he reflected, the more he realized that this authority was not about control over others, but a position of power, perspective, and spiritual alignment granted by God. It was an invitation to live from a place of identity, confidence, and divine guidance. Intrigued, Micah began to explore what it meant to walk in this authority. He learned that being seated in heavenly places means understanding that his identity and power come from God. Circumstances. It means recognizing that he has access to wisdom, strength, and influence beyond his natural abilities. Most importantly, it means living with the assurance that God has placed him in a position of spiritual authority to act, decide, and serve according to divine purpose. This realization transformed how Micah approached life. Life, as expected, tested Micah's understanding. Challenges arose, conflicts at work, personal doubts, societal pressures, and moments of fear that threatened to undermine his confidence. Yet, as he meditated on the truth of his heavenly position, he discovered that authority is exercised most effectively from a place of calm assurance rather than reactive struggle. Being seated in heavenly places means having perspective, viewing challenges not as threats, but as opportunities to demonstrate faith, wisdom, and divine strength. Micah also realized that true authority involves service, responsibility, and humility. Just as Christ exemplified leadership through love and sacrifice, spiritual authority is exercised not through domination, but through care, guidance, and protection. Micah began to apply this principle in his interactions, friends, counsel to friends, encouraging colleagues, and approaching disagreements with patience and understanding. In doing so, he experienced a shift. People were drawn to his presence, not because of status or fear, but because of the confidence, clarity, and integrity that flowed from his grounded spiritual authority. A defining moment came when Micah faced a major crisis at work. A project he had been leading faced potential failure due to miscommunication, errors, and external pressures. Initially, he felt overwhelmed, tempted to panic or force control. But he remembered the principle of being seated in heavenly places, maintaining perspective, seeking God's guidance, and acting from his position of spiritual authority. Through prayer, strategic thinking, and calm leadership, he navigated the crisis successfully. Not only was the project salvaged, but he also inspired the team to trust, collaborate, and operate from a place of purpose rather than fear. Micah realized that heavenly authority enables one to act with wisdom, courage, and influence that surpasses human limitations. Over time, Micah's understanding of authority deepened. He saw that being seated in heavenly places is about recognizing identity, living in alignment with God, and exercising influence rooted in truth, love, and purpose. It is not about asserting power over others, but about standing firm in one's calling, making decisions that reflect divine guidance, and serving as a conduit of God's will on earth. This spiritual authority brings clarity, confidence, and the ability to act with discernment even in uncertain or challenging circumstances. Micah's journey also highlighted the connection between heavenly authority and faith. The deeper his trust in God, the more naturally he exercised authority. Fear, doubt, and insecurity diminished as he anchored his identity in Christ. He learned that the authority granted by God is not earned or demanded, but received through obedience, relationship, and alignment with divine purpose. Being seated in heavenly places means recognizing this authority and stepping into it with humility, courage, and reliance on God's power. In reflection, Micah understood that true authority transforms not only the individual, but also those around them. It creates an environment where people feel supported, empowered, and guided by wisdom rather than control. It fosters trust, collaboration, and alignment with God's greater purposes. Being seated in heavenly places is a position of both privilege and responsibility, calling to act with discernment, serve with love, and influence with integrity. The story of Micah is a story for anyone seeking understanding of spiritual authority, purpose, and identity. It reminds us that true power is not measured by status, wealth, or control, but by alignment with God. The exercise of wisdom and the willingness to serve. It teaches that when one recognizes their position in Christ, they can navigate life's challenges with courage, clarity, and confidence, making a lasting impact through integrity and love. Ultimately, seated in heavenly places, a story of authority teaches that authority is both a gift and a responsibility. It is rooted in identity, grounded in faith, and expressed through service, wisdom, and love. Those who embrace their heavenly position experience perspective, strength, and the ability to act decisively and righteously, reflecting the character of God in every area of life. Through this understanding, one discovers that true authority is not domination, but empowerment, both for oneself and for others, and a life lived fully aligned with divine purpose.